through electricity. They're finding out it's through frequency. Well, guess what hydrogen sounds like? It's a key of E. Guess what, and it's the color yellow. That's what proper physics gets you to. Oxygen is a chartreuse, and it's the key of F over F sharp. Now they used to, like I said, information used to be thought about as just electrical information passing on. But I've got a question for you. Have you ever been at a party with some of your friends you ain't seen in 10 years, but y'all was like 14, you hung out and there's a song that came on and you go, ah, and everybody got up and was live at that moment. Now say 10 years later you got a friend with you. He's a good guy, but he wasn't there when me and my boys formed this. So when that song comes on, our DNA tightens. There's a particular song, a scale in the genomes for each and every one of us. Now when that song is played, when your particular prime resonant frequency is played, guess what happens? Your DNA celebrates and tightens. Everything else gets pushed out. Harmonic wave resequencing. The carbon is also the key of E and yellow. Nitrogen is G. And all these play a song. So say that the F over F sharps of the oxygen, the green, is only hitting at an F. Why? Because there's another frequency coming in from a generator over there. That's changing and causing it to change. So this F now hits the oxygen. And when it hits, the F hits the carbon. So instead of hitting as a F sharp, it hits as an F, so when it hits the carbon at an E, it doesn't hit it quite right, so the domino don't file right. So the next domino hits wrong. And so now we have malformation happening within our DNA because the frequencies are being pushed off. But when we hear our tone, we tighten back up. So yeah, I'm in the process of building the harmonic wave resequencer with another doctor who has been able to successfully cure AIDS and cancer. And it's well underway. But I wanted you guys to understand how that works. It's so simple. You do not need to tear the human body apart when all you can do is use frequency to bring it back to its normal space.
In the dim glow of midnight, Terrence Howard descended from the shadows, bearing secrets that could shatter reality itself.
Do you think that the reason that we have like economic crises, for example, is because we are not understanding our numbers correctly, according to your theory?
Well, I think we have an economic problem because we are the only creatures in this universe that use currency. There are no other creatures that use currency in order to exist. Why is it that we chose this strange thing that isn't even real? Other creatures, they drink water, they eat fruit, they eat other animals. We exchange with currency, and our system of exchanging with currency is flawed because of greed. There's not like if 1 times 1 equals 2, we've got an equilibrium of balance. 1 times 1 equals 1, you've got loss. When 1 times 1 equals 3 or more, you're talking about over unity and supersymmetry. And that's how you get the universe to work for you. Instead of using just the solar voltaics off of it, you also use the piezoelectric effects of it. You use other things to make greater unity. But 1 times 1 equaling 1, when it could also equal a pound times a pound equaling a pound, when it could also equal $4 or $10 or $100, does that make sense to you? Do you think the banks are abusing that? What's a quarter times a quarter? If I ask anybody in this room, what's a quarter times a quarter? That's 25 times 25. The computer will the calculator will tell you 6.25 cents. But we know 25 pence times 25 pence is 625 pence. That's 6 pounds and 25 pence, but the computer or the banks only have to give you 6 1/4 cents reference for it. Or let's say you put a dime times a dime. Go ahead, let me get this out. Say you take a dime times a dime. You put that in your calculator, it says 1 cent. 0.10 times 0.10 is 1 cent. But we know a dime times a dime is a whole dollar. But the banks gives us money based on that evaluation. Is that fair? And I might get shot about talking about this right now, but I've got a book coming out called Does a dollar times a dollar equal a dollar, or does a dollar times a dollar equal $2? And in the process, not only do I explain the death of the Platonic solids, but I also introduce the new Terrian wave conjugations that replace this Euclidean way of life and gives us a three-dimensional way of seeing the world.
The moonlit alley echoed with the weight of Terrence Howard's revelation, a clandestine truth that had remained veiled in the recesses of his enigmatic mind.
That's what I'm saying. Do you want to see the world in 2D or do you want to see it in 3D? Because our math right now is 2D. Our math is black and white and stick figures. I want the world in multicolor, spectral vision.
So you're saying £1 times £1 is equal to £2, but it's £1 squared, which doesn't make any sense because you've got a squared unit.
Squared. £1 squared.
Can you divide pounds? Can you divide money? If you can divide it, you can multiply it. All these things that I showed you guys, I've patented all these things. You know why I patented them? Because in 1926, a man named Walter Russell wrote a book called The Universal One, and in it he introduced an entirely new periodic table. And there he introduced the two heavy water elements, and then plutonium and deuterium. Both of those, all four of those elements that had never been discovered, he sent out to 800 different universities in his book. 2 years later, he watched as other people came and got Nobel Prizes for his work. Why? Because he didn't patent it. He didn't copyright it. So I copywrote all these things and patented all these things before bringing them to you. They are true, and I think there's some value to them. The money is, there's nothing wrong with the money, but how we deal with the money. But if you can divide money, you can multiply it. It works hand in hand. Or you can't see that. You can't see dividing money.
It's a matter of definition. If you define, it's a matter of definition. A pound squared is not a unit defined.
A pound squared.
If you multiply by mathematical convention, if you multiply 1 pound by 1 pound, same as if you multiply 1 meter by 1 meter, it should be 1 pound squared or 1 square meter.
It becomes 2. Why does it become 1 pound squared is 2, isn't it? Now, if you look at remember what I just said about the associative and the commutative laws. It says A is to be added to itself as many times as its units in B. And the only thing that prevents that is the identity element that sits up and says, no, the Jim Crow law sits. Black people sit in the back of the bus because that's what the law says, without even having a foundation for it. 1 times any number is that number without a foundation, with no principle. It just says it.
But if you go by your logic and you say 1 times 1 is 2, 1 times 2 is 3, and then how would you define 2 times 4? Is that's just...
That stays, all that remains the same. Anything with 1, just add 1. The first rule of multiplication...
Okay, then where's the difference between addition and multiplication?
Well, multiplication is what? Exaggerated addition. Isn't it?
But isn't it a matter of mathematical convention?
What is?
If it was defined in the beginning, it could have been defined differently, but logical, it makes the most sense.
Mic, darling.
Sorry. Is it a matter of mathematical convention? If you define beforehand that something, logically, it makes the most sense that 1 times 1, if you have 1 laptop, 1 times a laptop is 1 laptop, that makes more sense than you say it's 2 laptops.
Well, now if you say...
And then that's where the mathematical convention comes in. And that's large part of math is convention. It's how it has been defined. It's a matter of definition.
And it's wonderful. The convention is all right if the material and the information being shared in the convention is true. But when you're talking about dogma being added in, with that thing that I showed you, did you look at the square root of 2? Do you think that that's a loop, that's a natural thing with the square root of 2? Did you believe that?
Pi, there's not a mathematical...
No, it's not the same though. It's not the same with pi. What we just did, we multiplied it, we cubed the number, and then we divided it by 2, and we cubed it again and divided it by 2, and we did that a number of times, and that number still remained the same exact number, which we know cannot happen.
As the city slept, Terrence Howard unveiled a cryptic journal, each page etched with the forbidden knowledge that could rewrite the destiny of nations.
It's right there. And that's what they say is the difference between, that's what they say allows 1 times 1 to equal 1, because 1, 1.414121356237309 is the square root of 2. But we know that that's not the case. I tried to do it 80. I did it 6 years old because I had been working on it perhaps from a past life. We know that energy does not die. Energy just reboots itself and reboots itself. So we are eternal.
As the moon cast an enigmatic glow over the city, Terrence Howard emerged from the shadows, ready to unveil a trove of hidden knowledge that could reshape destinies.
If you lose that little spark that kept you motivated, that little piece, like this is my vocation. I love acting half the time, but there's some downfalls of it. A lot of actors end up with personality identity crisis and conflicts because you have so many characters you're playing. And if you really commit to the characters, you become like a piece of clothing. And your body becomes what they put on. And the character has a tendency of wanting to own you. They don't let go. What you saw in Anthony Hopkins and Hannibal Lecter, that monster lives in him. That's why we believed it. He had to tap into something very ugly in our human nature sometimes. And as an actor, sometimes I tap into beautiful things. But like with Lucius, and the character I play with Lucius, his life is filled with turmoil. So 90% of the day I'm walking around carrying his turmoil and also the turmoil from me and my own family. And then how do you have time to really bring yourself back to who you are? Because that's the most important thing. That's the thing that's going to bother you more than anything else. You will look at yourself one day and you won't know who you are because you don't remember who you were. Sometime along the way, or maybe at 13 or 14, we let go of the little person that kept us going. That little person that was always there, I got you, man, I'm here, I got you, don't go in there, I ain't going in there. That person, when we get about 13 or 14, we get embarrassed of him. And we push him aside and we don't listen to him anymore. And he's always knocking. Hey. And after so long of a time, maybe 10, 15 years, you don't even know him. You show up at your own door and you don't even know who you are. Your family doesn't know who you are. So it's important, no matter what you do, no matter what challenges you go through, you remember who you are.
The air crackled with tension as Terrence Howard stepped onto the stage, a man burdened with untold truths, about to shatter the illusions that had blinded the world.
Now, this is one of the oldest symbols in human history, right? Or do you not know? This symbol was found in the Temple of Osiris in Egypt, and it had been molecularly burned into the wall. And it's 6,000 years old. This same symbol has been found in the forbidden temples in China, sitting under the fufu dogs. And the foot on it, the flower of life, saying whoever controlled that flower of life controlled the universe. There were secrets in that flower of life that Da Vinci spent his whole life trying to uncover. There were secrets in that flower of life that Newton spent his whole life in secret trying to uncover. The same secrets that Pythagoras was desperately trying to uncover. But their problem was they kept seeing this in a two-dimensional space. They couldn't get it out of this two-dimensional frame, and as a result, they got stuck in this plane, a flat plane. Now, what Da Vinci and all of them wanted to do, they were trying to find a way to bring this flower to life, because what is inside of it? Well, apparently, there were secrets inside of it. Shapes, they got the Merkaba and all of those other things out of it. But they were misled by something I think called a straight line. You guys believe in straight lines? You believe there's straight lines in the universe? Well, let me hit you with something. All energy in the universe is expressed in what? It's in motion. If something is still, there's no energy. Kinetic, right? All motion is expressed in what? You look at galaxies, are they expressed in straight lines? Expressed in vortices. All vortices are expressed in what? Waves. All waves are curved. Show me a straight line. in nature. You show me where the platonic solids come from. Where do they have their foundations in our universe? Are there any straight lines? If you look at anything, there are no straight lines. That's been the mistake. We've been looking at these straight lines, this Euclidean way of thinking, and missing the curvature of nature.
Beneath the neon lights, Terrence Howard's voice echoed through the silent crowd, each word carrying the weight of a revelation, threatening to dismantle the foundations of reality.
Do you believe in loops? Do you know the square root of 2? Do you think that's a loop? Do you believe that the square root of 2 is the square root of 2? Yes or no? Hands up, no? I want y'all to take out your phone for a minute then. We're gonna do one thing. Everybody got a phone? Put it on the calculator and turn it to the side so you can get all the long numbers out of it, okay? Now I want you to put in 2 and square root it. 2, hit the square root, you'll get 1.4142135623730955, right? Now I want you guys to do me a favor, cube it. It'll see right over there, it'll be x to the 3. Can y'all do it? Have you cubed it? It'll see 2.828, 4271, 2174, 6190. Now that makes sense. I want you guys to do me a favor. Divide it by 2. Got that number? Cube it again. Divide it by 2. Cube it again. And I want you to do that until the end of your lives. And that number will still come up with 2.828, 4271, 2174, 6190. Any other number that you, above 2, that you put in and you cube and you square, cube and square and divide by 2, by the 6th operation, it has moved into an exponential number that you can't even imagine. Any number below 2 that you do that same operation with, it will go into an exponentially small matter and number. This is what we call a loop. It is illogical, it doesn't make sense, and it does not make math make sense. So these are some things that I'm bringing to the fore and that I would like to question. I would like to audit the math, the world of mathematics, and I would like to audit how we view the platonic solids, because I think the new wave conjugations will tell a better story of how our world works.
In a clandestine meeting, Terrence Howard shared clandestine wisdom with a select few, his words a catalyst for a storm of change.
Our planet is moving away from our sun at 6 inches a year. You guys know that. 15 centimeters a year, our planet is pushing away from the sun. So in less than 500 million years, our planet will be out of the Goldilocks zone. We'll be somewhere near where Mars is, somewhere halfway between there. So life will not be able to be sustained on this planet anymore. So if we're going to be able to sustain ourselves as a species, we have to become interstellar. Not just interplanetary, you have to become interstellar. But with approximations, you cannot become interstellar. You cannot become interstellar with a point that will take you all the way over here with a straight line when the actual event is taking place over here. When you're going 600 quadrillion miles, you can't make a mistake. You need precision. And that's what the math is about. These pieces predict the natural distribution of matter and the distribution of where you can find yourself in that space. And I'm confident behind it. For 40 years I've worked on this. And I think it's ready.
So I've sat also at lunch, basically trying to get my head around this, and also I was very, very, very skeptical, and I put my hands up and say that. And one of the things that you mentioned was sort of about how this applies to, I think it was the electric sun model, and that's where it's a theory that suggests that the sun is powered from external forces rather than what is usually, rather than nuclear fusion, which is the general consensus among scientists. And the reason for that is because there's not a production there's no evidence to suggest that the byproduct neutrinos are there. And
the neutrinos
what Terrence is trying to prove, I think, is that because the fact that you can't detect whether neutrinos are there or not, there must be another way in which they're powered.
As the room hushed in anticipation, Terrence Howard's lips parted, releasing a cascade of forbidden knowledge that sent shockwaves through the hearts of those who dared to listen.
Don't forget, you know what I didn't want to forget? This flower of life. Because apparently I'd been interested in it at a given time. And I came out and I was born. The first thing I thought about when I was 5 years old, I was obsessed with bubbles. I was like, why does a bubble take the shape of a ball? Why not a square or a triangle? And I would go and try and make square or triangular bubbles. And you could never do it because it turns out everything expands as a sphere and everything contracts in geometric form. You drop a pebble into the pond, it expands in a perfect sphere unless there's something in the way. The moment it hits the edge of the shore and starts to come back, it's the contracting waves that hit the expanding waves that creates the initial geometries. Everything expands as a sphere, everything contracts in geometry and fits, basically. So what I'm saying, and what I tried to tell you guys earlier, this is not your first time, it's not your first rodeo, and it won't be your last rodeo. Don't panic in this life. You can actually, there's no sense of death. Everything goes to sleep and it wakes back up again. Refolds and unfolds, refolds and unfolds. And if you're wise, if you're careful, because you can remember conscious moments in your life, can't you? You can remember moments when you're like, wait a minute, I'm in a bigger space.